My storytelling is about how to make kitless hardwood pens, but it's deeper story than that. The finished hardwood kitless pens here. I'm turning pens that begins with nature world that I bring into the work world, and then I take it into the public world. So nature world encounters with both work world and the public world itself. These are the kind of gel pen refills I use. Now, ballpoint pens began in 1888 with John Lord. It wasn't very functional. Then Laszlo Brio improves the ballpoint pen of 1930, and by 1950, big ballpoint pen company takes off and dominates the world. Now, my dad's pens aren't those cheap plastic covered pens. He used nature's woods, the hardwoods of Oregon. That's a picture of him in his shop. Here I have in my shop kind of a monument to my dad and the pens he made. They were kit pens. It's kind of pens by the number. You turn them on a lathe, you order a kit, and you take the little uh, stalks of wood and you put the little kits together. And they look very good and they make nice gifts. And he made the boxes that were amazing. And, he did that with a router. But the pen itself is, it's kind of making a pen by numbers and assembling a kit. And I wanted to do something a little different, but keeping in memory of my dad's craftsmanship. I mean, these pens are well crafted. You can see some of the other wood objects here that he made, and you see the each pen, is flawless in the wood turning. My wood turning, you will see, is not so flawless, and I'm not using a kit like my dad did here. Um, and I wanted to do something a little bit more creative than using a kit and making a kit pen. Uh, and a number of people are doing these kitless pens. But my dad's craftsmanship was a number one. I mean, there was no better kit pens out there than the ones that he made in Oregon. And he really enjoyed himself in the art of making these pens before he died. And here's the flag from the Navy. Here's his ashes. I'm going to spread those ashes up in Oregon when I get up there. Now, I go out and gather hackberry hardwood and mesquite hardwood here in New Mexico. And it starts with finding some branches that have fallen from the trees, or in my own yard trimming trees, and I'll get some branches that are thick enough and straight enough that they could be used to turn a hardwood pen. Uh, Here's one that's on the ground. It's just about thick enough. I could take that home and make a hardwood pen out of it on the lathe. And it's interesting to walk the desert and find bits of hardwood that somebody's chopped down or something. It's not legal, but I like to just say that the wood comes from nature world. But how do I understand nature world? What are the characters of nature world? Now here you can see the pens that I make. These are the hardwood pens, and they're made out of the desert willow tree, the hackberry tree, the mesquite tree. I don't cut down a tree, but I use the branches from the tree, turn the thing on the lathe. There's no kit. There's no pieces of metal stuck between pieces of wood. Basically, I make a tube in which the ballpoint goes into it. It's a gel ballpoint and works really good. So I'm going to talk to you about the philosophy of turning hardwood on the lathe into pens. Now I use a horseshoe rasp that as I turn this piece of hardwood that I found in the desert, and I brought it back, and not quite sure what it is. It's probably some sort of desert willow. Now, when I'm looking at the philosophy of pen making, there are three steps that I'm interested in. Step one, the exposition of the characters and the encounter of the world. The here you see my work world, but I've brought in the nature world into my work world, and I'll be giving these pens out in a conference in December on the storytelling conference, National Storytelling Conference, that'll be in Nashville, Tennessee. And so that's the public world. The public world is also the world where the commercial pens are sold. And, I'm making a small little dent in that by giving pens away that I've made. So there's the intersection of the three worlds in step one that I want to talk about, this encounter I'm having in the work world, with spinning the lathe, using the big file with the big teeth on it to draw down and turn the pen to a shape, and then I'll take smaller files with less gross teeth on them. I'll stop from time to time to kind of see where I'm at in making the pen, and how much further I have to go. I have a lot of. This is about twice the thickness that I need for the final pen. And so it's just, it takes a lot of time and attention to detail to turn the pen. And it's my encounter here in worldhood. Now, as I go from step one in the exposition of the characters, the tools I'm using, myself there in the scene, the hardwood and taking out of nature. I want to go give you a little sense of step two is the interpretation of this encounter as these phenomenal elements here that are parts of my storytelling of the characters and the encounter of the work world, the public world where the pens are sold and commercialized and that sort of thing, and you can pick up a standard pen of one manufacturer or another. I don't like these standard pens. I prefer to make my own. And that's part of my interpretation of the encounter, the phenomenal correlation of these elements that I'll get into in a minute. And we'll get to step three, the determination of the basic structure, deployment, and the totality of worldhood. So I'm working with Martin Heidegger's notion of being in the world and its worldhoods and how these worldhoods interact. So let me just review. Step one, expositions of the character and the encounter of the world and worldhood. Step two, interpretation of the structure of the encounter, the phenomenal correlation of what's near and what's far. As I have my tools near me now, and they're ready to hand in the process in step two. And then step three, determination of the basic structure, deployment, and the totality of worldhood and the world as a whole. So the encounter with worldhood has those three steps. And as Heidegger proceeds, he develops 4 parts of the analysis. In part one, we have the work world encounter. In part two, and the work world encounter, by the way, is called the alpha part. In the beta part two, the things in worldhood encounter that are handy, things ready to hand. The file is ready to hand, as you can see here in the demonstration. Now in part three, called the gamma part, the worldhood encounter is always already there. So the wood I'm using is already there. I'm reshaping it. The file is already there. The lathe is already there. The whole process of doing pen turning is already there, and is a long history of hobbyists like myself turning pens and giving them away in the public worldhood. My shop, myself as a craftsman, I'm in there. Now there's a fourth part that we'll get to later, and we did the alpha part, the beta part, the gamma part, and in an introduction, and we'll get to the delta part, and that will just get us into the meaningfulness of all of these processes and their role in storytelling, which is my bailiwick. So in the delta part, right, that we'll be getting to the meaningfulness, and we'll get to the spatiality of these pens as they enter worldhood and they become worldhood. And again, we're looking at multiple worldhoods. The work world of the artist here. I'm an artist, so using woodwork, and I'm making wood gifts, pen gifts to give to the public world of the conference I'm going to. But I'm also interacting with nature world and where these hardwoods come from, the different kinds of hardwoods, their different properties as I take them through work world, and they really turn out to be quite different pens. There's also a mathematical physics world. There's a physics to turning the pens and shaping them and pulling the sawdust off, and the way I'm holding the file here determines the pressure on the art item I'm developing. So let's begin with step one here. Again, there's the 3 steps: exposition of characters in the encounter. Step 2, the interpretation of the structure of the encounter. Step 3, the determination of the basic structure, deployment of the totality. And along the way in these 3 steps, we work with the alpha, beta, gamma, and delta parts of the encounter. And these are analytic things that we learned in Martin Heidegger's book, The History of the Concept of Time, which is a prelude to the book Being in Time. So I'm demonstrating this using the turning the pens here that I'm making as presents for a conference, for a storytelling conference. Now everything is about as well the spiritual world, because as you've seen, my dad passed away. I've got his ashes and his flag, and there's a certain spiritual connection of myself to my dad, although he did the kit pens and I'm doing the kitless pens. Part of the characters in the encounter in step 1 have to do with that. Okay, so let's get a little more detailed about step 1, the exposition to characters in the encounter of the worldhood here. Multiple worldhoods: my work world, the public world, the spiritual world, right, and nature world. So these worlds are interactive, and I'm looking at how I can bring an art object into being, and it'll be dwelling in the public world. I'll be giving this as gifts, and people will use them. Hopefully they'll like them, I don't know. And they write very well. I use high quality gel inserts, ballpoint inserts, and they don't skip, and they're very, very, very good quality for penmanship. Now, then in step 2, there's the interpretation of the structure of the encounter, the phenomenal correlation, and the founding of characters. So the characters in my work, this wood I encountered in a walk through the desert, and I wasn't quite sure what kind of wood it is. It seems to be desert willow, but we'll see as we continue to turn it in the qualities of it. Desert willow pens, a very good grain, and they beautiful colorations when you're done. Now there's the idea that in my interpretation of my own pen making, all the stuff that's already there in my shop, I have a whole shop which I've accumulated over the last dozen or 15 years, and a lot of world things are taken in there, and tools are ready to hand, and some are just scattered around the shop present at hand. But when I'm pen turning, the tools I'm using are there, and they're ready for the process. Now, as we go through the work world of my concern, this is the alpha level of the analysis. Also start to get into the beta level, my encounter with the nearest things. The nearest things are the lathe and the big file I'm using. Later I'll use smaller files and sandpaper, and they're all set, ready to go. And I'm letting the encounter with what is always already there to be appresented. So what's already there, I have an idea of the shape of the pen. I like a nub, kind of a ball on the end of the wood of the pen. Find I can hold on to it easier, and it's really makes me able to write better as a left-handed person. Now, as we continue to craft the hardwood pen, you can see how difficult it is to and how long it takes to get it down to a shape that's the size of a pen. And I want to talk a little bit about my trip through getting to the delta level. The delta, that's the fourth part of the analysis. And I'm present in the world of the encounter, and I'm being in the world myself, Dasein, and being there. I'm being there with the art objects, I'm making the art objects, and the whole world of my understanding of the art, right? And what's being uncovered is the texture and quality of the pen itself. Now here I'm using a finer file, I believe, here to check the grain, and I may have to use the bigger file again and go back and forth until I get to the sandpaper itself. Now, one of the things that's exciting about all of this is the world space, right? It's not about the substance of the pen I'm making. That's not the ontological term I'm interested in. The point is the spatiality can only be interpreted in the basis of worldhood. So these worldhoods, the work world, the public world, the spiritual world, right, the nature world, they all are coming together in this notion of what Heidegger calls the spatiality of the world and its worldhood. And so spatiality is explicated from worldhood. This is a major point of the whole presentation. The worldhood of space is not what Immanuel Kant defines as space out there and time out there, but being in time and in spatiality as I do the steps. Now, Heidegger has his own a different set of 3 steps for what he calls a roundness, the phenomenal structure of roundness. That's step 1, that's pens and penmanship, right? It's not only just making the pens, but how the pens are used. And then step 2, the roundness of the pens and the characters of the world of spatiality. I start to use the pens themselves to make letters, to make words, to make sentences, to craft storytelling. And the spaces between the words and letters have an impact. The spatiality of the word itself, the sentence itself. In the old days, the words didn't have spaces. You know, if you go back to the 12th century and before that, the words were all just run together in Europe anyway. And Leonardo da Vinci, later on in the Codex, he wrote backwards to keep his ideas secret. So, and some cultures write left to right, and some write their sentences right to left. So there's all these variations in the phenomenal structure of a roundness. So there's developing the pen itself as I'm checking it out and using the small file here again, right? There's what Heidegger calls remotion. Remotion is not the distance of the pen as it'll be used on the paper, or the distance of my file in shaping the pen. It's not a geometric distance of the pen and its shape. Remotion is an ontological notion, an ontological concept, right? It's discovered and defined as I have the encounter with making the pen and then using the pen in my notebook. Now, the direction of the sentences I craft in the notebook, I'm moving from left to right in the notebook, and there's an aroundness of pens in the world. You can go in any Family Dollar or Dollar General or Target or whatever and buy pens. You can order them on Amazon. But you can't order the pens that I'm making because my pens are just made as gifts. And you have to find somebody that has a lathe and makes hardwood pens without a kit, you know, and without a manufacturing plant, and brings their presence into the world itself. Pens always have a nearness. You know, you keep pens around you all the time. You keep pencils around you too. But here we're talking about ballpoint pens you keep around you. And in step 2 here, in the spatiality of pens, we're looking at the pen as being in the world. And the primary remotion, right, is always the world itself, the nearness and distance of that world. So I'm bringing the nature world into the pen itself. It's not a plastic pen. This is a hardwood pen crafted by myself as the artist. And I'm remotion, making the distance disappear here between nature and the art objects. So how does the pen make distance disappear, right? As I am using the pen, right, and making the spaces of the words, the spaces of the letters and the words, the ink is slipping onto the paper, and understandability is emerging in the way the pen is expressing the letters and the words and the sentences, the paragraph, the spacing is a kind of a deficient remotion. Remoting is the existence, the existential of Dasein in process of an unworlding. I'm unworlding nature. I'm unworlding the work world. I'm unworlding as the pen is traversing into the public world and be given out in the conference that's coming up in December. Now, penning, you know, turning the pen, the regions of the pen, and then writing with the pen has a different feel to it than a ballpoint pen that's plastic, like a Bic pen or some other pen, or even a Mont Blanc pen that you purchase from some manufacturer. There's a different kind of lettering. My handwriting actually changes when I use the hardwood pen that I've crafted on the lathe. I've picked out the wood the kind of wood that it is, or I found the wood and I'm discovering what kind of wood it is. I'm uncovering the grain of the wood, the texture of the wood, and how the refill will be going into the pen itself. I'm crafting as you see here, the front of the pen, kind of a nub at the end. This is my signature kind of a pen that I make. I like a nub because it keeps me from slipping down over the edge of the pen. It gives me something stable as a left-handed person. I'm unworlding. I'm unworlding the right-handed world as a left-handed person, right? I'm using the sandpaper here to kind of develop the finishing touches on the pen. I'm holding this tube of sandpaper over another sandpaper because the heat of turning the pen gets very hot and it burns your fingers a bit. You can stand it if you keep moving, but if you're going to go at it for more than 20, 30 seconds, that sandpaper heats up. Here you can see I've moved my fingers out of the way. So I'm holding the sandpaper and gliding it over the pen. Okay, so I'm continuing to use the sandpaper to bring the pen into fruition, right? And I'm spatializing the pen. It's taking on the space in the order of things. And just to bring you up to date here, there's the app presentation. There's bringing into presence and bringing into spatiality this pen. And here you can see the pen itself. It's in the pen mandrel. I'm going to pull it out in a second, just show you the pen. And you can see the wood grains that are there. And now I'm going to take it over here to this special sander disc and shape the end of the pen itself. So I've got to, there you can see I've started turning the end of the pen. I want a round ball on the end. And I find that if I shape it on this sander that moves around, the sandpaper moves around as well as up and down, I can start bringing the pen, the tip of the pen into the size I want, the shape I want it to be in, and get it ready for writing. I'm going to get it ready for inserting a refill in it. And there's another step that I have to do after that to shape the kind of a screw cap that goes in the end of the pen, so to keep the ballpoint in place. Now let's kind of review here what we've done. In this notion of aroundness, the pen that's around us, and we're using the pen here, I'm shaping the pen before you can use it. There's a phenomenal structure of pens around us as we use them in penmanship or penwomanship, and we pen the letters, the words, the sentences that go on to notebooks. I have a garage full of notebooks. I develop notebooks every day. Now here's, I want the pen to be in the size to go in that pen stand that's there. That's a larger piece of wood than I cut just for the purpose of having that pen stand. It doesn't quite go yet, so I'm going to shape it. I like it a little. I don't like the nub of the pen to be too large. I want it to have a feel. Now, different people I give these as gifts will want larger nubs, or they might want no nub at all, just a straight end. And so I try to craft a variety of pens and shape them for a number of different people and their own aesthetic. and the way that the pen will feel to them. Now I'm putting the pen, it's not yet a pen, but I'm putting the wood stock back into the lathe, and I'm going to, because I use that crude sanding machine, I want to shape the end and make it better, and I want to bring the whole pen into its final shape. So here I'm using the file with the smaller teeth, and now I use the sandpaper with the thick grain. It's probably like a number 20 or 30. It's rather coarse. The sawdust is flying off, but I need to shape that end back to where it's going to be smooth to the touch, and develop that. So this is the interpretation of my encounter, my phenomenal encounter with the characters in my work world, the nature world, the spiritual world, the public world. And as those encounters happen between work world, public world, here you can see in number 120, sandpaper, I think it is, and the nature world and spiritual world, all of this is running through my body and my hands and my mind, and the encounter with the work world. The work world encounter, again, has the alpha, beta, gamma, delta parts to it. The work world encounter, the things in the work world that are handy, the tools, the wood, the lathe, etc. That's the beta part. The gamma part of the work world encounter is what's already there. I've got the shop arranged, the things are there, ready to use and ready to shape the pens. But it's already there is how people use pens and notebooks and penmanship and the style of what considered good writing or bad writing's penmanship. If you remember being in the first grade or second grade or third grade and maybe even kindergarten, they taught you how to do make letters and what were the proper spaces between letters and difference between block writing and cursing. That's a number 600 sandpaper. That's a very fine sandpaper. You can get 1,000 really, really fine grain. I just have the 600, and I'm going to move that back and forth, not holding it in one position too long, except where it's rough. And now I'm going to feel it and check it out, see if there's any nicks or grooves in there that I have to take out. I see I have used the heavier grain sandpaper to draw out. There's some imperfection I want to bring out and keep the pen turning. Again, I'm not using a pen turning kit where you get it down to the metrics of all the parts of the pen kit that have to go together. Rather, I like just the one tube of wood that the ballpoint refill will go into and slide into the pen itself. Now, I've gone away to get something that's not in the scene here, and it's the liquid wrench. It has kind of a silicone base to it. You could use a lot of things. I use oil. I use a lot of things, but now the wet sanding is what's going on here. So the lathe is turning the wood, and I'm using the wet sanding. I'm going to talk a little bit more about how I'm grounded in the encounter with the world in step one. Now I'm using a cloth and just kind of polishing the final sheen of the pen itself. As I make more and more of these pens, and here I'm doing the finishing touches, rubbing the cloth, keeping it moving on the pen, and just polishing it up. I want to make 100 pens. And as I make number 98, 99, and 100, they're going to be a higher quality here. I'll take it off the pen mandrel and show you the pen mandrel and the pen itself. And you can see some of the intricate graining that's in this. And I'm pretty sure this is a desert willow. Um, it has that kind of grain. It's not the most hardest of the hardwoods, but it does do a good job in making a pen. You don't want to make that real thin because it will split on you. That's about as thin as you want to make a desert willow pen. Now it's time to make the cap of the pen itself. And we'll be going through these same steps, the exposition of the character of encounter. Okay, we're going to use a grinding wheel. We're going to take a bit of wood, a twig. It's got the right diameter I need to make an end cap. And what I'm going to do is grind it down and make like a little bolt. And I'll even thread it here with a tap and die. So I'm going to cut this, and you can't quite see it here. Let me stop it here for a minute. All right, here I'm turning the twig, and I'm shaping the end of it so I can get it down to about 1/8 to 3/16 of an inch, so it'll fit in the end of the pin that I'm making and twist in like a bolt. It'll take a while here to do the shaping. I mean, these are not things that happen instantly, but I'm familiar with and worked out a way to do this. And I'm going to try to be really careful, because if I make it too thick and I try to jam it in the end here, I'm going to split the wood and destroy the art object that I've been trying to make. It's kind of obstructive, right? And it doesn't belong in the end there, so I have to shape it very carefully and bring it down to a size that'll fit but not slip loose, and keep the ballpoint insert in place here as people do their writing of letters and words and diagrams and whatever. And it'll have a certain workability, usability as I proceed with this. Now, I've got a familiarity with doing this because I've made, 20 or 30 of these end caps. But in step 2, I have an interpretation of the encounter with the environing world that I'm in. And I've got an understanding of what I call the fallacy of storytelling. It's not the bodily presence of these items, it's the way in which I'm working with them that counts, right? And I'm in a process of artistic development, right? But I don't want to deceive myself and think that I'm developing some great art piece. I'm working in a tradition of pen turning with a lathe, with a machine, right? But I'm present here with, in this case, the grinding wheel, and making this end cap that'll go into the main art objects, and they'll twist together and keep everything in shape. Because I'm grounded in the encounter with the world in step 1, right? As it appresents the thing of art that's coming into being. And with the alpha, beta, gamma, delta, the alpha, the phenomenological interpretation, the beta, the functions that this end cap is going to have in the pen itself, the gamma, the work world that's already there, the art object is already there, and this end cap is going to go in the end of the art object as kind of an appendage to fasten the ballpoint insert itself into the art objects, and that's it. And the delta that's interesting because it's the interpretation of the meaningfulness of this. The fact that I make it myself from wood already present, using tools already present in the work world, and I'm taking like 3 hours to craft a pen and then give it to somebody. I've gone through the alpha, beta, gamma, delta parts of the analytic here with you today. And I've gone through the 3 steps in understanding worldhood, the components of the worldhood, the relationship in part in step 2 of these elements, and the encounter, and then when we develop some understanding here. So this I hope gives you a way to enter pen making and develop your own hardwood pens yourself, but in a deeper understanding of the philosophy of penmanship, the philosophy of pen making. I can remember being in second grade and learning how to make an N, the letter N, and having the little loop on the end and the loop on the beginning. And the teacher said, "Oh, you're making a good N, Dave." The only good thing that teacher ever said to me is I could make a good N. You know, it's interesting how we go through life and people tilt us one way or another to in the encounters we have with them in developing that. Now here I'm going over to the workbench and I'm going to see if I can insert a refill in here. And I'm going to take the end cap and thread it through. And to be honest with you, I rushed the threading a little bit and it caused me to damage the art object a bit. I'll be able to repair it. It won't be total destruction of the art object, but I needed to spend a little bit more time here. And that's what you learn, to just take your time. If you rush something in the exposition of the characters of the encounter, it has consequence in step 1. In step 2, the interpretation of the encounter, the phenomenal correlation between the elements themselves. Here I'm taking the refill, I'm going to insert it into the art object itself. Okay, and there we go. We insert it. Boom, it goes right in, it pumps right out. It doesn't always happen that easily. Sometimes I have to jerry-rig the end of it. But here, the way I drilled it out, it actually fits pretty good. Now the end cap here, I'm going to twist the end cap on the end. And here is where I'm going to just check, and I need to have a little bit, make it a little tighter. And here I'm being careful. I'm going to do the right thing and take it over to the sander and sand it down a bit. And I'll show you that. So I'm making the shaft of the art object shorter by sanding it down so it doesn't, the bolt that I've made out of wood that'll screw into the end doesn't need to be as long. And I really should take, if I'd taken off another 1/8 of an inch here, I wouldn't split the wood on the end. I'm going to show that to you next here. And I didn't even see it during the thing. I didn't notice it till after the whole taping was done. But let's take a look here. And okay, so now 1, 2, 3. And you notice here I give it that extra, boom. I'm actually splitting the end of the art object here. Let me show you that. So now I'm going to take it over to the saw here and cut the end of it. I don't want a big nub sticking off the end here of the bolt, so I'm going to take the twig, and it's screwed right into the art object itself. I'm going to just cut it right through, make it pretty thin, about 1/8 of an inch. on the end, taking it real slow. You don't want to rush this with a bandsaw. Bandsaws are really dangerous. You want to keep all your fingers. Okay, so that was successful. Turn it off. Gonna come around now, and so I'm deploying the total. I'm in step 3, like step 1, exposition of characters. Step 2, the interpretation. Step 3, kind of the deployment, the totality of the worldhood. So I'm shaping the end here. It's a little slanted, it usually is, and I want to make it so that it could stand up if somebody wanted to stand the pen up on a table like that. Here it's not ready to stand up, so keep shaping it, getting it ready. So I'm in step 3 here of getting it ready for deployment into the worldhood, that it enters the public world of the gift that I'm giving. It's leaving my work world, entering the public world. I won't be able to work on it anymore once I hand it to somebody. The nature world, the nature piece of the branch that I picked up has been shaped into the art object. It's gone from my work world. It'll be going to the public world. So nature world, public world, art world of the work world I'm in, and the spiritual world of me making the pen in the tradition of my dad, who used the kit's pens. I don't use a kit. I try to shape the art objects. He was more the mechanic than the artist, I think. He was an artist in his own right, and I'm an artist in my own right. And so I have this connection to my dad as I make the pens. And so that's a whole part of the encounter with the worldhood, right? And the alpha, beta, gamma, delta, right? The work world encounter, the things in the work world that are handy in the beta, the work world encounter that is always already there. You may have read some of my stuff that I believe that in the anti-narrative process, he's already there. There you can see the pen and some of the beautiful grain work of the pen itself. And now I'm not sure what I'm doing here. What am I doing? I seem to be searching around for something. Okay. Yeah, I'm just showing you the pen and some of the grains of the pen. And it's actually quite a beautiful pen. And I've put it in a little stand, so people are going to have it on their desks. And that's about it. I hope you've enjoyed this. All the best.